Hey everybody, it's Michael from Replica Airguns with an instructional video. We're going to talk about full blowback versus partial blowback airguns, and this can apply to both steel BB and airsoft. Not generally to pellet. Most of the pellet guns will be partial blowback, as the air nozzle doesn't really pick up a pellet in that case, like you'll find in a full blowback BB or airsoft pistol. That air nozzle that's situated at the back of the slide when it comes forward on a full blowback will pick up one of those rounds and chamber it into the barrel there. That's kind of how a full blowback works. Partial blowback works a bit differently. I'll kind of show you what I'm talking about as we go through this video. So I have several guns here. I have some Beretta M&Ps that are, we have one that's full blowback, one that's partial blowback. They're pretty much the same design gun. One is licensed through Umarex, this one here. The other one is just, I believe, a KWC gun, unlicensed. Then we have licensed Glocks, again, full blowback, partial blowback. We'll get into the differences. And then I have some other partial blowback pistols that are slightly different because I want to address that the partial blowback aren't exactly the same in how they work. All right, so let's start off from the right side here and we'll go through these two pistols, the M&Ps. We'll start with the full blowback. And what you're going to notice is the slide can go all the way back, but it also locks almost all the way back. So you'll notice the lock, the slide catch release locks back almost all the way. And what I want to show you is there's this nozzle right there, and that's going to push the BB into the, so out of the magazine. So you'll notice that on this magazine, the BB is kind of situated right there. So when the nozzle comes, the BB is right there, and the nozzle pushes the BB, whether it be a CO2, whether it be a steel BB 4.5 millimeter or an airsoft 6 millimeter BB, it pushes it into the barrel and chambers it. Kind of like a real gun, how it chambers around out of the magazine as the slide comes forward, chambering around in basically the breech of the gun, okay? Which happens like that, okay? So that's essentially the difference. You'll notice the magazines look a little bit different. As I was saying, they're just a solid magazine. You'll notice whatever ammunition type, steel BB or airsoft, will be at the top here. You'll be able to see it. It's kind of like the top of it's exposed. Very straightforward. And so comparing that to a partial blowback gun, you'll notice how the slide doesn't lock back as far. It doesn't even go back as far. So even the furthest back that it goes isn't as far as the lock back. So it's basically partial blowback. That's why I call it partial blowback. And it's a little different. So instead of having that exposed top of the round it goes up to the top here and it's encompassed in the magazine. And so when you pull the trigger, what happens is a BB is pushed forward, right, into the chamber. So your trigger finger is actually doing the work in this case. Now, the hammer is generally cocked by the slide action, so you don't have to pull the hammer spring, but you do have to chamber around. And what I find, just a little heads up, is the more rounds you have in here, the tighter the spring, the more pressure is kind of on those first few rounds when you're chambering them. As the spring comes up, it becomes less tight. There's less pressure on the BBs, and they tend to chamber a little bit easier. So you may notice that with this style of gun, if you've got a fully maxed out magazine, the first few rounds are a little tighter when you're pulling the trigger. The trigger seems a little bit heavier. That's why, okay? So you're literally, your finger does the chambering of the round. Now the advantage here is that you'll notice that when it's forward, this kind of seals up against the breech, the chamber, so the barrel area, the entrance to the barrel where the round goes in, and it seals it off a little bit better compared to a full blowback gun. So you tend to get more shots per CO2, and you tend to get higher FPS with the partial blowback systems. So there are trade-offs. The full blowback is more realistic. You get a little more slide action. You get potentially more simulated recoil. It works more like a traditional gun, okay? So that's kind of what we're going after. So here's another example in the Glock version. So you have this same type of idea. You've got the exposed ammunition at the top here. So you'll notice that just pushes it up. And as the gas tube comes forward, right, the gas tube there, you can see it. It pushes, see if you can see it. It would basically push a BB or airsoft BB into the chamber, the breech area. And Bob's your uncle, you're ready to shoot and ready to go. Let's take another look at a partial blowback system, literally the same magazine. And these magazines are typically metal in the top here because they'll actually have like all the CO2 valve system in there, so they're metal, they're a little heavier. Sometimes there'll be plastic on the bottom, but this one's metal. Your CO2 generally goes in the magazine on these ones as well. But again, your finger is doing the chambering of the round as opposed to the slide coming forward and the air nozzle chambering around. Okay, now there are exceptions to the partial blowback guns. Here's another partial blowback gun. You see the slide doesn't go back that far, but it is a blowback gun, okay? Usually on the partial blowback guns, the slides aren't as heavy of a spring. They don't make as much cool sounding, clanky sounds. This happens to be a stick magazine, so there's no chambering, or your finger isn't chambering around, right? It's just basically the BB comes up, it just is in line with the CO2 nozzle. These are going to be a little less CO2 friendly, so they're going to use a little more CO2 because it doesn't really seal, but you don't have that clanky sort of finger tension-y thing that you might get when the magazine's full. So that's a bit, better in terms of that. And here is a non-stick magazine that happens to be similar. You'll notice that, okay, it's not fully exposed. So when you pull the trigger, I don't think anything's really pushing on it as far as I can tell. It's a little different. So this is a partial blowback gun again. Okay, notice how it doesn't lock back very far. But it works very well. This is a cool gun. And you have less, trigger tension on those first few rounds when it's loaded up full with a gun with a style like that. All right, so again, full blowback is going to work a little bit more like a real gun. The slide's going to cycle all the way back, all the way forward. Generally speaking, the slide action will pick up a round and chamber it, so there's less work. You got usually really light trigger actions. There's usually single action only, or at least single action and the option of double action, but generally you're going to be shooting in single action. All you're doing is releasing the hammer. Very little finger work. You can shoot a little faster with a full blowback gun. Partial blowback, your finger's doing some of the work, chambering the rounds, but you do get higher CO2 velocity, so more velocity generally out of those guns, and better CO2 efficiency. All right, thanks for watching another Replica Airguns video. Hopefully this video has been informative, answered some of your questions. Don't forget we sell air guns, BB guns, airsoft guns, pellet guns, blank guns, and other accessories in both our Canada and US Replica Airgun stores over at replicairguns.ca for Canada and replicairguns.us for the US. We also have our blog over at replicairguns.com with links to both of those stores and articles, reviews, additional pictures, and sometimes even more information that I may have left out in the videos. Don't forget to subscribe. Check me out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thanks for watching. Until next time, take care.